You're listening to Tuning In with Jeffrey Kipple. And sometimes Mindy.
Welcome to Tuning In. Yep, this is where we get to sit down and chat with authors and artists and musicians and creators and innovators and athletes and specialists of all types.
It is our hope to provide a platform for passion-fueled, purpose-driven individuals who want to make a difference in their own lives and in the lives of others. Others being you and anyone who's deciding to be tuning in to the lived experiences, the life lessons, and the discoveries that led to creations, innovations, and messages they want to share.
Yeah, so tune in, laugh, learn, get inspired. Tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in, tune in with Jeff and sometimes Mindy. Who's Jeff? I'm Jeff.
Who's Mindy? I'm Mindy.
Tune in.
So tune in, tap in, and take action. Tune in to their wisdom, tap into your potential, and take action to unleash your superhero. Welcome to Tuning In with Jeff and sometimes Mindy.
So tune in and enjoy the show.
Welcome to another episode of Tuning In with Jeff and sometimes Mindy.
That's me.
Tonight we have a guest that I'm really excited to talk to because her background is in the environmental movement, and that's where I first started with any of my writings.
Actually, she has a lot of similarities with you in many ways.
She does, and we're going to get to find out about that. So welcome to the show tonight, Lillian Brummet.
Welcome.
Thank you. And hey, congratulations, you guys, on your 23rd. That's awesome. Very cool.
You know, we were just talking about the fact that there's a lot of similarities, you know, in your world and our world. I know you work together with your husband as well. We do. You know, and you started down the pathway on the environmental side, which is where I really started. You know, when we talked that time, here's the cover of that first magazine, and message behind everything that you do is really to help make a difference and help raise that consciousness level, which is really the same thing underlying on our end.
That's cool.
So I'm really glad to have you on the show today.
Me too.
Oh, thank you. Me too. I was so excited to come here today. Really, really excited. Yeah.
Very cool. You know, something that I want to ask, when I initially started this environmental magazine, so that was at the time that I was the environmentalist at that time, started this magazine, and what was the first step to create awareness back then was reduce, reuse, recycle. You know, those were the key things. And that magazine came out even earlier than your Trash Talk came out. And then that message had to have transformed a little bit further from there. And now you still involved where the message again has changed. So someone who was getting actively involved in the environmental movement back then is completely different than now. So how have you seen those pivotal changes?
Wow. You know, that's a really good question. Okay. Well, it has evolved. Absolutely. I mean, everything has evolved. The consciousness in society has evolved since 99 when I first started writing in this topic. And I have seen like leaps and bounds, the changes in the system itself, how it's grown, how it's evolved, how it's had to overcome like every obstacle that you could imagine. It's had to overcome and, you know, deal with all the operations and the systematic, you know, connecting everything together. It's had a lot of challenges, that's the whole system, but you know, people have really embraced it. When they go shopping and they buy something that they know that that company has used wind power instead of, you know, say coal power, or they purchase something when they know that there's a take back program and the packaging is all recyclable and made from recyclable materials, they leave feeling with a lighter heart. People really want to do good. And I really feel that this allows them, it gives them the tool to practice what they feel in their heart. Otherwise, I think the weight of society sort of presses down on us. So I look at it as fantastic all the way around, both for emotional and for, of course, making a difference. We have seen some incredible stats that are so encouraging. Like, they say that 42% of the waste that's in our landfills today is organic waste, even though we have a lot of organic waste collection programs, compost, incentive programs, and so forth in many communities around the globe. So there's a lot of room for growth, but imagine taking that 42% and all the jobs that would create as well, taking that 42% out of that organic, out of the landfill, and how much room now is going to be in that landfill for the future. Same thing with recycling. Recycling alone, if we just participate in the recycling as much as we can in our region and participate as fully and committed as we can reduce what we're sending to the landfill in our homes, from our offices by 60%. 60%. And in the meantime, again, we're helping to generate millions and millions of jobs in the industry. So there are a lot of reasons.
Well, it's interesting on how you say it from that perspective, because at least for us, it seems like it's much more commonplace. It's like, okay, this is what goes in the garbage. This is what goes in the recycling, and which recycling bin to put that into. And that's where it's evolved. And I think a lot of people may not even connect the fact that they're doing that and that's having an environmental impact. It's more, that's just what they do. They know to do that, right?
Yeah, isn't that a great thing though? Like when we see that green doesn't have to be mentioned, that we don't have to underline recycling because it's the norm now, and places and people who don't are kind of seen like a little bit backwards, And so, the social pressure as well, because everybody's doing it. So for those who aren't, there's that social pressure involved. I think it's fantastic. I mean, that's really evolving as a society, when it's an unspoken, assumed thing that we're all going to recycle, we're all going to participate.
Well, so then you would have seen the wave of the awareness in the whole environmental movement, and you may have seen it get to a certain tipping point where it got to be, this is the norm for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So my question is, did you notice a certain tipping point when that happened? And if you did, what was it that you think pushed it over?
I think people realized that their efforts do make a difference. I think that there was initially, when the recycling programs were just starting up and becoming incorporated into cities planning and things like that, we were noticing that programs were happening in the 1990s, 1999, right around that era. And I personally was finding that people were in a state of apathy. They were like the deer in the headlights. They were being fed all this information, about negative information about the environment and the state of the world. And I think at that time, and sometimes we fall back into that frame of mind where we feel like, little old me, what can I do? And then you get into the state of pointing fingers at other people. They should take care of this. And that company is really bad, or this government policy needs to change. And yes, those things need to change, but I think it starts with ourselves. We look in the mirror first, look at the man in the mirror or woman, and make sure that we're starting in our own homes, in our own offices, in our own lives, day to day. Every moment is a chance to make a difference. And we need to celebrate that, and I think the awareness of that, when we start seeing how these programs are creating jobs, we see how billions of dollars are being saved, that manufacturers are loving this raw material that they can now turn into products that consumers embrace because they're feeling good about buying these products made from recyclable materials. Manufacturers are saving money. The earth is saving because now we're not raping these raw ores and raw materials out of the environment. We're actually reusing and repurposing and reusing again and again and again. And now that we've had a chance to iron out a lot of the wrinkles in the system, I mean, there was a lot. When people started really getting excited and they really started participating, there was a lot of problems with, like, they had too much to work with and they didn't know what to do with it all. And so sometimes they still struggle with that. There's still always some issues to iron out and to work out little, make sure it works out perfectly. But they're doing a great job in the system. So many things are now accepted. We can divert so much from going to the landfill now if we only participate. And that's without changing our own lifestyles or anything. We're just handling the waste that we're currently producing in a more responsible way and creating millions of jobs and saving all kinds of money. And it really makes a big difference.
Those who are already participating, is there a tip or a suggestion that you have that they may not be aware of that they can do in addition so that they can kind of one up what they're already doing to help make a difference?
I think when we're going out shopping, really where it comes down to is where we're spending our time as consumers, whether we're consuming a product or we're consuming information online. Because I really feel that manufacturers, all those data researchers, they are watching everything that we do. And so every time we click on a video or watch a movie or watch an ad all the way through or purchase an item over another item, they're watching all that data. And so every choice that we make does have an impact. It's like a vote as to the future of society. I think we forget how powerful we are, whether we're viewing something or purchasing something. We have this huge power as to where the direction of society is going to go in the future.
That's a really great way to look at it, because that means everyone, with every choice that they make, they're making a choice towards what they want to have.
Yeah.
What sparked your passion with all of this?
My personal passion is to make my life, to feel like my life has value, that there's a reason for me to exist on this planet right here, right now. For me, that's really, really important, just to be able to look at the man in the mirror, look at her eyes and meet those eyes. I really need to feel that way. It helps me battle depression. It makes me feel more positive about life. And it gets me in connection with people like yourselves who are out there making a difference. And I get inspired by people like you. And it just becomes a cycle of everybody feeds everybody, and the enthusiasm grows. And I find it really invigorating to work in this particular genre of inspiring people to make a positive difference, just by realizing that this moment right here is your chance. Every moment, every breath is a chance to make a difference. And so we try to encourage that in everything that we do, whether it's with our blog or we have 2 blogs, or we have 6 published books in a variety of different genres.
Do you want to share?
Of course, I'd love to. Well, today on the topic that we're speaking about, I have a series that's out. Dave and I have a series that's out. It's called Trash Talk. It's Easy to Be Green, and that's a 2-book series. So book 1 walks you through the 7 or 8 R's that are involved in reducing waste. And then it lists everything alphabetically that you would commonly find in the waste or recycling bin in your home or office. And it talks about the recycling industry for that item. It talks about advances that are happening. It talks about ways that you can reuse or repurpose that either for yourself or in some way contributing to a program that's happening around your community and help their budget go farther. So there's quite a few different ways of looking at our waste. Then the book 2 delves a little bit deeper. It takes more into like energy conservation, water conservation, composting, a little bit more deeper, a little bit more hands-on involved. It talks more about ecotourism and things like that. So we also have a book that's out just recently that's also along this vein, and it's called From One Small Garden. And this is a recipe book, cookbook. It has about 300 recipes in it. And in that book, we focus on encouraging the people to purchase from their local food suppliers when food is at its peak. It's in peak harvest, so your budget goes farther, but also what you're buying has the most nutrients in it because it's recently harvested. It hasn't sat in a warehouse. It hasn't traveled. It also impacts the environment because not just your local food supply and pollinators and so forth, that the farmers are, of course, enthusiastically helping along, but it also, your food has a great big impact on the environment in regards to where it was grown, how it was grown, how far it has traveled, how it was transported, where it was stored. And when you think about the process of this, I could go on and on, but when you think about the process of your food, it's packaged at one place and then it's broken up and wrapped in plastic again, and then it's shipped off to somewhere else because this much goes to this place and that much goes to that place. And then it's repackaged and then it's shipped to somewhere else. And so every time there's all that plastic and packaging and warehousing and fossil fuels impact. So we can eliminate all of that by shopping locally and supporting our local suppliers. And so if you're a gardener or you're just starting gardening or you're purchasing those peak harvests and you come home with a truckload of produce because you get carried away, what are you going to do with all of that food? So that's what our book helps you do. It helps you make those large batches of soups and several batches of like enchilada roja or something like that. And then you freeze them in your select size for your family meals. And then they're ready for you when you don't have time to make those meals. And we encourage reducing food waste in that book too. So we make sure that you go through and don't throw out your scoop it into the compost or throw it out or feed it to the dogs. You can actually keep it, put it in the freezer, and you can make pakora, you can make these stews, you can make this and that and the other thing. So we teach you how to do that. And the very last chapter also helps you reduce waste because we teach you how to make your own pest deterrents, such as ant deterrents. We also teach you how to make your own air fresheners and house cleaners from a well-stocked kitchen, things you should have commonly in your kitchen already. So it saves you from all of that packaging and extra bottles and what have you. So I'm really passionate about that one. Obviously, we have 3 more coming out this year and 2 more coming out next year or so, 23, 24, somewhere around there. So, it's important to us.
And by us and we, that's Dave, and Dave is your husband? Is that correct?
Yes. Sometimes when I'm doing interviews, I always feel like I'm being selfish because I'm speaking from my voice. So I'll say I and me. So I try to throw in some we's in there because it's every time I say I mean Dave and I, of course.
It's funny. Yeah. It's very similar to us. That's funny. So what's your story? How did you and Dave come together and start working together?
Oh, well, we met about 32 years ago. Dave was born and raised in the Okanagan, and I moved there, met him there. He kind of chased me down, convinced me that he was the great guy that of course he is. And we've been together ever since. We started writing in 1999 professionally. Before that, both of us sort of dabbled at it here and there. But when I started the writing career for me personally, Trash Talk is where I started. It was the very first article that I wrote, and it was picked up right away. It became a column, and it was published in multiple countries and all over Canada. And it was fantastic, a really nice ride. And then it just launched from there. I guess I guess the feeling of wanting to make a difference, and then the response that I got with the Trash Talk column, that feeling never went away.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow. I just want to comment on the name Trash Talk, because that's just brilliant. I love it.
Thank you.
While we're still on the subject of Trash Talk, do you want to do a reading tonight? Is there something that you'd like to share?
Oh, yeah, actually, I would like to. I would like to actually talk about some of the R's that are involved in reducing waste. I think that when we look at reducing waste, we're thinking mainly recycling, but there's a lot of things that we can do beforehand and prior to looking at putting it in the bin and giving it to someone else to deal with. So I just thought I would just quickly go over those, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sounds like it'll be helpful.
Okay, so the first thing I think we need to look at is the reconsider. This is where we're looking at the power of the individual that we were talking about before, you know, what we decide to watch, what we decide to click, what we decide to purchase. Reconsider our power as an individual, as a consumer. But because we already talked about that, I'll just let that go. Refuse. So this is where we refuse to accept manufacturer standards. We refuse to accept current levels of, say, waste management in our region that we're not happy with. We're going to stand up. We're going to write a note. We're going to write an email. We're going to get involved. We're going to stand up and say something. We're going to also celebrate those who are doing something. So refuse. It's not just refusing those who aren't, but I think it's also respecting those who do. So for me personally, if I've noticed that a company that I chose to purchase from has done something like, let's go back to the solar power. They've decided to convert most of their energy consumption into solar power. I'm going to write them and say, I'm really happy that you did that as a consumer. They take that to their meetings, they talk about it, and that becomes a really powerful motivation tool for them because they take hearing from their consumers very, very seriously. So every letter, email that we can write, whether it's a refuse or a respect sort of email, it's a good thing to do, but make sure that we let them know either way. So another thing we need to look at is renting and or bartering. And this comes down to a couple of things. So let's say we have a tool that we only need to use a few times a year. Maybe it's a rototiller, maybe it's a weed whacker or something like that. The best thing that we can do is either barter with our neighbors. They have a tool, we have a tool, we're going to share. If we don't have that kind of relationship with our neighbors or friends, that's okay too. There are a lot of tool rental places that you can go to. There are all kinds of rental places of different genres, but I'll just say tools for this example. So we don't necessarily have to purchase that great big item, bring it home, maintain it, you know, have somewhere to store it, all of that kind of thing. We just go that we're supporting a local business who's, you know, preventing people from purchasing all of these items. So it's a fantastic way of reducing waste and supporting your local economy. Bartering is also a really great thing to do, whether it's, you know, say my neighbor happens to have a prolific Saskatoon berry shrub, and it's just a fantastic producer. I happen to have a really prolific asparagus patch, so maybe we're going to trade back and forth. So we're going to barter back and forth, and neither one of us now has to go out and purchase that item from the grocery store because now we have that here locally. So that's just another way of reducing all of the packaging and all of that too. So the reduce, when we go shopping, we want to look at buying in bulk. You know, that's always a great way of reducing that extra packaging. We want to look at, you know, when we are putting our waste into the bags or into the recycling bin, that we're squishing them, we're flattening the boxes, you know, put on a pair of boots and stomp that plastic container flat. You know, if you aren't going to be reusing it in some way, make sure that it's nice and condensed and in there nice and tidy. That makes a big difference too, and where you're storing it, how you're storing it, the convenience of your storing it, because convenience is actually one of the reasons why people stop recycling as much, because it becomes less convenient. And making sure that when you do buy something, you're buying it with reuse in mind. So maybe you're choosing a particular product because of how it's packaged, because you know that you can reuse that packaging in some way. Then we want to look at reuse in particular. So let's look at a peanut butter jar container. You can take that jar, wash that label off, and now it becomes something that you can either store some bulk or dehydrated foods, or maybe you can use it in the workshop. It's clear, it's plastic, it drops, it's not going to break. You can use it in the workshop, and now it's got your bicycle parts in it or something like that. Lots of ways of reuse that we can consider when we're out there shopping. Now, Another thing that we want to look at is like the repurposing. So let's take a vinegar jug, for instance, the ones with the handle in it. We can do a couple different things. We can cut off the bottom. The bottom becomes a plant pot. We can give that plant pot to somebody. Maybe we use the bottom as a container that we're giving away some of our tomatoes from our deck to someone. The top part, if we cut it at an angle and we keep the handle, now it's a scoop. You can use that scoop for your dog food or for your garden amendments and a variety of other materials like that. And that's just a quick little overview of that. Of course, there's rot and there's recycling as well, but that's all before recycling. So
that's great, because it's things that people may not think of, and just having that awareness or just that visual of, yeah, I could use that as a scoop, then people then take action on that and then, put that in their focus.
That's right. That's right. I mean, one of my favorite reuses is I take yogurt containers and I cut them into garden tags that I can reuse many, many years, because I put carrot on it or something, and I reuse that until the carrot part wears off or the tag becomes damaged. And then I turn around and put it into the recycling system after that, because it's still recyclable, but I found a way of repurposing it and reducing my consumption of brand new tags.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all that you're doing and helping create the awareness for people to have, because that's the first part. And I think that when people hear things and they can now visualize that and they understand the impact, then you can't unknow that.
Isn't that the truth?
Right. So that's cool. And that leads a little bit into an action step. So that's one of the parts of the show that we like to be able to offer the viewers and the listeners some way that they can take action and do something that's going to highlight the message that you're trying to share and give them an opportunity for growth. So what did you come up with for that?
Well, I came up with conscious discussions, #conscious discussions. I like that because actually a couple of reasons it ties into a lot of the things that we've done. We've had a radio show called Conscious Discussions. Our blog is called Brummet's Conscious Blog. But because I like the term, I just really feel that when we raise our awareness and we change our conversations with people, we realize the impact that we can have in our conversations. It raises the level. I was hoping that the people that are listening today would use that hashtag and inspire more conscious discussions. Get on social networking sites, use your social media, your YouTube, your blogs, what have you, and start some or continue your conscious discussions, but use that hashtag so we can all follow along.
That's great. So as far as an action step, then people who are aware of something that's important to them, but other people may not be aware of it, this is kind of the action to actually now take that step to make other people aware and share what you've learned as well. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have a resource, if you have a tip, if you've had success doing something, let's hear about it.
Amazing. So then the stories that you hear about that blow you away and you're like, wow, that was a really cool, let's say somebody uses the hashtag conscious discussions and they actually inspire someone to take new action or have a new awareness because of it. And then they take new action and that results in something that it might be they're really proud of themselves or they inspire someone or any sort of story. But if anything inspires you, we want to know, because then you and them can come back on the show.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. And you're right. You never know where the ripple effect is going to go. You could have a conversation with someone and you think that it's gone, it's over. They're not thinking about it anymore. And maybe it was only a 5-minute conversation, but you don't know how much that's going to echo in their mind, in years to come, or the next week or the next day, or in their next conversation, and how that ripple affects with their family and their contacts and so forth. It's pretty amazing when you watch what happens.
Yeah. Well, there's something called a convincer level. And that's the number of times that most people need to hear something in order for it to have that click, that aha, or that moment to make a change. And that the average of that is 7. So it means that people really do need to hear that message again and again and again in different ways. And then it does click. There is that moment when they'll be doing something and have that recollection of, oh yeah, this does this benefit, and then takes that action.
That's right.
It will be really cool to see what kind of stories, may come out of this.
Oh, absolutely. One day I was hearing from a listener, and they told me that on their way home, they stopped at a volunteer center and signed themselves up. I mean, when you hear something like that and the impact that they're going to have on their children, their family, their friends, because of that action, it's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
That is.
Yeah.
Huge, not just cool, because it's like a big impact.
Yeah. And just because of a conscious conversation, right?
Nice.
Well, awesome. Well, it was great having you.
Thanks.
So I found that to be an interesting discussion.
Oh, yeah, why is that, Jeff?
It came down to really that everybody at every moment has that ability to make a decision on how they want their future to be, which he said, what you're watching, what you're clicking on, and it's what are you placing your thoughts and your attention to? That is all, that deeper level of every moment you have the ability to make a change or make a choice on how you want the future to be or your state of mind to be.
Tuning in with Jeff and sometimes Mindy supports the Rethink Fit initiative, empowering you to take action to love better how you think, feel, function, look, and dream.